Good afternoon.
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 Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hi. Okay, can everyone see the screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you. Okay, so here just some review of what we did last class. So on last class, I give you a template of how we can start write some C++ code. So every C++ code program we did so far, it will have a standard beginning, and then we will put our code, and then it have a standard ending. And for the standard beginning, right here it's our code and standard ending, and we will put our code somewhere in between. Okay, so in the standard beginning, it will have include IO string, and you have using namespace, std, and then you have int main, and then you have the parenthesis followed by open bracket, and we will put our code, and we will end with return 0 with a semicolon, and it will have close bracket. And one instruction we learned is the output instruction, where we will have cout, then you will put wherever you want to print, followed by the arrow. And in your lab section, your lab instructor should show you how you can log on to your Mars account. And that's where you see me to put my code and then run my code in. Okay, so let's look at an example. So let's make C++ say welcome to CS111 class 2 with a smiley face. So how can we do that? What's the first thing we need to have?
Standard beginning.
A standard beginning. So we will always start with include IO string. And then we'll have using namespace, std, semicolon. You'll have int main, and then the open bracket. So this is always the standard beginning, right? So hopefully after you do you feel problem, and then you will memorize the standard beginning and standard ending. Now in our body part, we need to put our code, which we want to print welcome to CS111 class 2. So how do we do that? Okay, so we will cout, right? Cout is the command where it will print whatever the thing we want to print to the console, to the screen, right? So we'll have the quotation, then have welcome to CS111 class 2 with the smiley face, and then we will end the quotation, and then we can just end the line here. Now what we should do is we should end the line there, right? Because if we don't end the line there, after we print out this message, it will have like the prompt for wherever our heading right after it. So we want to end the line. So that's our body part, and then we need to end the program. So we'll say return 0. And then we'll close the bracket. Any questions here? So if you look at it here, it's our standard beginning. And then here's our standard anything. I see people say, can we list the end line in the first line, right? And then after the our message, yes. Right, so that's a shortcut we can use since you want to print both message out, so you can actually put it in the same line. So let's run that in my terminal. So I already logged it into my Mars account. So I will make a file for us to write the program. So I will use nano. This is the example one, and then all the C++ file will end with .cpp. And then I will have include IO string using namespace std and main. So here's our standard beginning, and then want to see out. Welcome to CS 111 class 2 with the smiley face, and then we will end here, and then we will end the line. And then we'll have standard ending, return 0.
Professor, quick question.
Mhm.
Do you always have to return 0, or can you return, like, let's say a string or a Boolean, or is it just a 0?
So for now, we will just return the 0. And if you notice, like later when we learn about the function, so the main function, technically you could return other integer. But for us, we will just return 0. And then when we write the more advanced coding, you will have a return other integer for different purposes. Maybe you want to catch your error.
Okay, all right.
Right. So if you look at the heading here, right, you have int main, right? So this kind of tell you what you should return. But this will be a little bit advanced for now. So we will cover that when we mention functions.
Oh, so you always have to specify like what you're returning, what type you're returning.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Okay, so for now I will save our program.
Professor, how do you save?
Let's see. If you look at that here, which for okay, so if you are in the program here, if you look at on the bottom, it will tell you normally if you just exit, right, it will ask you like, do you want to save it? And you just say yes. Right. So it depends what compiler you are using.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
For my lab, we were using coding rooms, so I don't know how to like use the Mars.
Your lab instructor should tell you how to log into the Mars account. If they use the other application, it will just be the practice purpose, but you should also learn how to log into the Mars account. So if your lab instructor didn't mention that, I will ask them to do it in the next lab.
Okay,
Professor, I have a question. So I noticed using Nano for my
Yes.
lab today, we use the VI editor. So is it the same exact way or is it something different? Because I noticed at the bottom you have like codes at the like you get like keys at the bottom. We didn't get keys at the bottom of ours. We're using VI, so I assume it's different, right?
Okay, if you use VI, it's just different compiler, and then they will have different Linux command. That's also fine. Okay, so after you write the program, right after you save your code, if you want to see what we wrote here, we can. There's a command called cat, and then you will have your file name. You will be able to see what's your code you put in there. And before we compile, like before we run the code, you need to compile it. So that would be the G++. So no matter what editor you used, you will always need to use the G++ to compile your file. So it depends on what compiler you use, you might have different command to save your codes. Okay, so we compile the code, and then you will see that after we compile it, so before we compile the code, we don't have this a.out file. After you compile it, you will have the a.out file. Okay, and once you compile it, then you can run the program just that /a.out, and it will run the program for you. And it will say, welcome to CS111 class 2 with a smiley face, because that's exactly what we asked it to print out. I see people asking, do all the compiler use the same commands, like make directory, mkdir? That's the Linux command. So you can pretty much use that in your you can just use those commands in your terminal.
I have a question. After
Mhm.
doing nano example 1.cpp and you type in out your code, how do you exit that code typer place?
Okay, so let me just make a copy of my file here. So I just copy the example1 file to example1a, and let's say I'm in my file, right? And let's say I make some changes. In the nano, if you look at the bottom, it will tell you the command. So you can just exit Control X, it will exit, and if you make any changes, then it will ask you do you want to save your changes? And if you're using, and I see people put it in the chat, if you use the VI, then you can do the colon WQ.
I see now. Thank you.
Okay, and people before ask, can we put this end line right after the first line? So we need to get rid of the semicolon as well. So this will be after we print out welcome to CS111 class 2 with the smiley face, we will end the line. Right, since these two commands, it both ask you to do the cout. So
Sorry.
yes.
Now, can you chain those like less than symbols, like as many as you want, or is it just
Yeah.
like two?
Yes, you can do it as many as you want.
Oh, thank you.
So as long as they are all cout, right? If you just want to print out a bunch of things, then you can keep chaining it. Now, normally we would just use a new cout for different commands. It just make it look neater, and you don't want to have like a huge line. So normally we just start a new line when you want to break it or when the line gets too long. But when your line is short, you just want to end the line there, that's also fine. Right, so let me save this. So do you see here, like since I make changes here when I exit, it will ask, do you want to save the modify buffer? So I will just click Y for yes, and then I will just hit enter, and then we will be able to go back to our terminal. And again, every time when you run the program, you need to compile it. So we are compiling example 1. And then when we run that, it will give us the same answer.
Professor, so when you save the program, does it automatically save it as A out?
When you
or did-
compile it, wherever the file compile, it will be in the a.out file. So if I list all my file out, you will see here is the a.out file. So since I just compiled this example 1a, so now in my a.out will have the example 1a. So every time you compile, this will be replaced with the latest file you compile. Good?
Yeah.
Now let me copy this file again.
I have a question.
Mhm.
What format do we save the file in, DOS or Mac?
What's your question?
Like what's the format for saving the file? It shows multiple formats, DOS or Mac format.
Since you just hit enter. Right. So for Nano, you just do the control. Let's see. Let me go to the example 1b. Right. Okay. Now what happened if I put a quotation around the end line? What
It'll
would the
just print-
output change?
It won't indent at all, and then it'll just print and L. It'll print the word and L.
Okay, and I see people say it will have error or print inline. So let's test it out. Right. So this shouldn't give us any error since in our function it asks us to print something in quotation and it will ask to print more thing in the quotation, then we finish the program. Right. So there's nothing illegal here, but it doesn't make sense to do it. So I will save the file. So I will hit Control X and then it will ask, do you want to modify the file? And I will say yes. And I just hit enter. We will go back to our terminal. And again, we will compile the file. And then we will run it. And if you look at it, right after a print, we'll come to CS111 class with the smiley face. Since we put quotation around the end line, it will just print the words. And then since we did not make it a new line, it will just follow by whatever the heading we have for the prompt. Okay, so we need to be aware we cannot be aware like where you put the quotation. So wherever you put inside the quotation, it's what gets printed out. Now, if you don't have the quotation like the end line, that's like a C++ command. Okay, I see people say we can just add inline after each quotation. Yes, with the if you just want to make it the same line, like you can move this part, but you don't need to have another CL. It just you can put this the double arrow and then the inline right after here. Right. So that's like what we have for the example 1a. Right. So we just have here. Right after the message you print out, you can have the end line and then end there. Okay, so if you have any problem logging to your Mars account again, in your lab session, your lab instructor should be able to help you with it. Okay, and we will move on. So we just learned about how we can output the data. So today's class, we will learn how to input the data. So before we input the data, you might ask, where does it store? Where do all the data store in the computer? So that is actually turned out to be like a deeper question. So for us, we will just think of all the data gets stores in computer memory. So you can think of the computer memory as the following, right? So you can think of the computer memory as a very long line of space, and in there it has some data. So each data, I will draw it in some boxes. So your data gets stored in those boxes, and thereby be more. Okay, so your data for our program will goes into those boxes in C++ memory. So for example, I can have those boxes unstored, let's say number 7. I can store the words hello. I can store 3.1415926 and so on. So those boxes are called variables in C++. And every variable will has a name and a type. So a typical name we can give, right? So for example, for 7, I can give this box a name X. So so this variable will have a name X. And I can call I can give hello a name. I can call this variable, let's say greet. Right, since this is a greeting word. And I can give the variable 3.1415926 a name pi. So besides the name, so these are the typical name we can give to the variable. Now we know that each variable should also have a type. So we need to know what's the type of the data. So let me give you some fundamental types that we will use in 111 in this class. Now, when you go to more advanced class like 211, you will learn more primitive type. So we can have a type int, we can have type string, we can have type double, we can have type char, and we can have the type bool.
Professor.
Mhm.
Would it be possible for you to show us examples of these things so it will be like a little bit of a better understanding? Because personally,
Yes.
yeah.
So I'm giving you example of this. So now I'm just giving you the name of those type. Now for int, I think people will understand it just by the name, right? It will be for the integer. So int will be the type for integer or whole number, right? So we can use it. We can use the integer type variable to store integer. Right? We can use it to store 5, to store -3, to store 0, right? We can only use the integer type to store the integer. Now for string, we will use it to store any text. In other words, anything in the quotation, right? So we can use it to store hello. We can use it to store let's say we can use it to store Queen's College, right? So anything in the quotation will be the string. Double, it's for the decimal number. Right, for example, we can have 1.2, we can have negative 3.5, we can have 3.1415926. And then for car, it will be for single character. Now, those are the character that we put in the single quotation, like the single code. So we can use it to store X. We can also have the single quotation for, like, let's say the $sign. So just the single character. Right, even the empty space will count as the a single character. Like a space is a character in C++. Now bool is for true and false. Right, so a Boolean variable, right, it will be either true or false. And I see people asking, the character can be a letter. Yes, it's just a single letter, right? So each letter, capital letter, lowercase letter, different special character, they are all a character, right? Or the symbol, even the number is a character, but you need to put it in like the single quote, right? So for string, you put it in to the double quotation, and then for the car, you put it into the single quotation. So now if we look at here, right? So for the variable x, we will have a type int, right? Since 7 is an integer. Now for hello is a string, right? We put it in the quotation. So this is a string. And pi is a decimal number. So we will have double. So those are the typical types we see. Okay, so why do we care about the variable name or the type? Well, because every time when you use a variable, you must declare the variable before you use it. So that's a rule in C++. Um, you must declare a variable before you use it. And declare means you need to tell the computer what's the variable name and what type of variable it is. Right, so you need to tell so pretty much you need to tell C++ what is it you storing, right, for the box. And you need to give it a name so you can access to the box, right? So when you call on the name, right, C++ will be able to find the variable for you. Now here is how you can declare the variable. So you will always give the type of the variable you want to use, followed by the name of the variable. And then you will always end it with a semicolon. Right. So for example, in the example before, we have we have a box named X. Right. So we will declare like int X, right? X stores an integer. And then we have a semicolon. And then we have a box called greet, and that's a string type. So to declare it, we will have the string and then greet. And then we will have a double type of pi. So this is how we will declare the variable. I see people say you can set equals to something when you declare it? Yes. Right, so either you can declare the variable and then assign the value to it, or when you declare it, you can initialize it. Right, so for people who already have some experience, that you say you can actually set it equal to something, right? This is what we call the initializing it, right, to a variable. So yes, you could set that equal to something when you declare it. You will just put, so pretty much you will put the data into the box as you declare it. Okay, now let's look at the C++ name rule. Okay, so in C++, when you give a variable name, you need to be aware of two things, right? Just use the letter. First, you should just use the letter and the digit. And you must begin with a letter. Okay, so you can give the name wherever you want, but it should follow the two rule here.
Wait, Professor, the name is for the file?
No, for the variable.
Oh, okay, okay.
Right. So if you look at here, right, we give each variable a name, right? For this 7, but we give a name X, we give the name grid, we give the name pi. So you can give the name wherever you want. You can give it, you can use letter or digit, but just make sure you begin with a letter. Okay, so I will give you a list, and then you will tell me, are those names legal?
So Professor, when
Mhm.
you're making, hello?
Yes.
Oh, when you're making a name, you have to use both letter and digit, or
No. You could use letter or digit. Right. So if you want to create a name with just a letter, it's fine. You don't need to use digit. Right. But you can combine the letter and the digit. And just make sure you need to begin with a letter. So if you look at those example here, which of the example here I give you is illegal?
5x?
5x. Right, so 5x is bad. Right, because we need to begin with a letter. So this is bad one. So x, 5 is fine. Hello, capital hello is fine. Now, if I ask you, is this two the same name?
No.
No, they are different. Right, so be aware, C++ is case sensitive. So uppercase and lowercase are different. They would treat it as different character. Now I see people say, can you have space? So if I give you example, can I have a name called Queen's College?
yes?
And I see people say no. And for people say no, why not?
The format is the type and then the name. And then if you're doing a third, like it's a string Queen's College, the college is already something else that will cause an error.
Okay, so if you look at it here, right, we have some letter. what else we have? There is a space in between, right? So here is a space, but we are only allowed to have letter and digit, not space. So we cannot have space. Okay, now there are some exceptions, right? You could have underscore. Underscore is treated, it's fine with the name, but for now, just to make your life easier, just only use letter and digits. Right. So I see people say you can add an underscore for space. Yes. So like underscore is like an exception. Right. So there are like a few character you can use in the name. So those are the exception. Besides that, when you can pretty much use the letter and digit. So to make your life easier, just use the letter and the digit. Now, in terms of the capitalized letter, for C++, you should always stick with the lowercase. So it's not a rule, but it's an advice. So to avoid some problem, or like because there are some uppercase name, it have by default they use it to store some value. So you don't want to accidentally create a name that this value it already used for something in C++. So to avoid those problems, advice when we give a name, always go, if you're not sure what to do, always go for the lowercase. Okay, now for people who have experience in Java, then they it's a different story. Like in C++, in Java, you will see like capital letter here and there, and then if you like what they normally do is like the first character of each word they will capitalize to indicate, okay, it's a new word. Where for C++, if you look at the code, most of the variable they are all lowercase. Now, if there are few words there, people might use the underscore to break the words. I see people say, do we need any prior knowledge of coding for this class? No. This class, we do everything start from scratch. You don't need any prior knowledge for coding. Okay, and I see people say, can we write entire code in lowercase? Pretty much yes, except things you put in the string, but that's the message you print out, so that doesn't really count. So if you look at like the code we wrote before, everything is lowercase. Right, except here, but this is the message we print out. That's not part of the C++ code. Right, if you see all the comments, it's pretty much lowercase. Okay, I see people say, so example 1 in GS is the same as example 1. Well, if you want to use example 1 with all capital in C++, it's still a good name. It's just that it's just for practice, people don't use like just some format where people follow. Right, so that's why I say this is advice, but it's not a rule. So for people who familiar with like Java or JS, you might have the name like example 1. Right, so this is still a valid name in C++. It just, we don't recommend it. Right, but this is nothing wrong. So if you look at it, this is still valid name. Even you capitalize the E, is still a valid name. Now, example with the underscore 1, or if you just say example 1, this is something like people will do in C++. So both work in C++, but this is what we will go for since we are doing the code in C++. But they are not the same name. They are different name. They are different name. Right, since here you have the capital O and then here you have the underscore O. So they are different name, but
Does that work? Underscore?
yes, underscore works. So underscore, it's like an exception for like why I say like we should only use letter and digit. So if you really want to like have like a space, but if your name involve multiple words, you don't want to have all capital or lowercase letter, make it hard to read. And if you want to have the lower, if you want to have the underscore there, that's fine. So that's one of the few exceptions you are allowed to use. Okay.
Are there any other exceptions like underscore?
Besides this, I think you can also use dots. So I would say for now, just stick with letter and then the digit. If you really need, use the underscore. Okay, now for the input instruction. So I see people talking about like use equal sign to initialize the letter, right, to assign a value to the variable. Now, besides that, we can also take an input from the user. So what it does is we will ask. So we want to ask, let's say, user for the data, and then we want to put the data into our variable. So this means before we ask the user for the data, we need to have the variable ready, right? So we need to declare the data. So for example, we can have int, we can declare integer x. And then the model we'll use for the inputting the data is cin, right? So cout will be to print a message out, right? So to give an output. Cin is to taking an input. Now, since we are taking the input from the user from the console, right? So the arrow will be the right arrow, right? So you have the arrow pointed to your variable. So the model will be cin with your variable name. And then semicolon. So if you want to take an input from the user, then you will declare the variable, and then you will say cin, and then take the input to x. So let's do, since we're running out of time, we'll just do a quick example here. So ask the user for their name and say hello to the name. So we'll just do it directly here. Okay, so we'll always have the standard beginning IO string, include IO string, and then using namespace std in main, and then here is the standard beginning, and we want to declare an integer. Okay, we want to ask the user for their name, so the name will be stored in the string. So we'll have string, and then we'll just call the variable name. And then before you do like a cin, like we know eventually we want to take the user's name and then store it in the name, right? So to ask the user to print that, you need to let the user name know you are asking for the name. So we will do a prompt. We will ask what's your name? Here, and then we will take their answer into the variable, and they will want to say hello to the name. So we will see out. We will say hello with a space, and then we want to follow by their name. We want to print their name out. Wherever their input, we want to say hello to them, and then we can end the line. So if you look at that, I put multiple comments in the same line, since all these 3 comments, they are all the cout comments. So for the same comment, you can put them into the same line. So that's our code, and then we will finish the code with the standard ending. So we have return 0, close the bracket. I see people say, so the string for multiple comment. No, the cout. Right, so we want to print out hello, we want to print out the name, and then want to end the line. So cin is pretty much you take the input in Python. So yes. Okay, so let me save it and then quickly run this. So if we run it, you will see it will ask us what's your name. So so let's say my name, I will say my name, I will say John. And if I hit enter, it will say hello, John, right? So it will print. Let me show you the code. Right, so what it does is it will ask you what's the name, and then we will put in the name. So it will store in the variable name, and then we'll print it out. So we will print it after hello, and after that we will end the line. So we will have wherever the heading in the new line. Any questions here?
Yeah, I have a little bit of experience in C++. Don't you need to include the string header file to use strings?
What do you mean the string header? Like the std?
Like the pound include the string.
No. Right, so this is the data type we can use.
Okay.
So we can just declare and use it.
That's in Java. In Java, you have a separate class string.
I have a question. If you enter, let's say 2 words, it only prints the first word.
Yes. So that's because when you take in the input, whenever you have a space in between, it counts as a new variable. Like it counts as a new data. So if you have 2 inputs, so let's say like a people print, give their first name and last name, then it will count as 2 input. So to get their full name, you need to have 2 variable, and and each variable will store like a first name and then the last name.
So
Okay.
what if you're asking a user to type in like a sentence, for example? Do you want to, what's the best way to do that? Do you want to create a new variable for each and every word in that sentence? Or like, how would
Yeah.
you do it in that example?
So in that case, with like so we need to be very careful with that. So for the for our let's see.
You would do the same thing as she did here. You just basically see out and you take in the sentence. And when you say
No,
see, it'll save the whole sentence.
Okay, so the problem here is like the string here pretty much it will only take one word at a time, right? So for now, like if you just input a sentence, there's no way we will be able to keep track of the number of the word that you use it. So we can do it like this, and it will require more advanced commands. So that's not something we are able to do it now.
Okay, yeah, I think someone else also helped explain it as well. Like, so if you're passing in a whole sentence as one, you can do it as one string, or would it break up the string into multiple strings whenever there's a space?
Yeah, so pretty much whenever it's a space, it will count as one data.
Okay.
So that's what happened here. So whenever you hit enter, it will break. So if you so one way to get away with it is to have like maybe like something like the underscore as the using underscore as the space, then it will just treat like the whole sentence. Since you have the underscore in between, then you don't really have the space. So it would treat the whole line as like a data, like as a string.
Okay, yeah. So you would get like the underscore, then you would replace every underscore with a space in like the code.
Yes, yes.
Oh.
So at this level, we will be careful with what we ask from the user.
All right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Right, and then what we ask for. So probably next class we will ask like the user for multiple information, or we can ask the user for multiple information, and then by so we have the control on how many input will the user give. Then in that case, you will know how many C-in you will do. Right, pretty much everything you do a C-in, it will take a data.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Thank you. That makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, so we will end this class here, and then we will continue next class. I see people asking where do we access the class recording. There is a link in your syllabus, and I see people copying the link here. So if you just save the link at the end, normally like at the end of the day, right, in the evening, I will upload the recording. Once the office hour, Monday and Wednesday at 11 to 12. If the time doesn't work for you, you can always email me, and then we can set up a time with you.
Have a good day.
Okay, have a good day.
Bye, Professor.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good day, Professor. Thank
Can you
you.
go back to example 1?
You want me to show you the example one?
Yeah, just for a second.
Okay, so here's the code. Can you see it?
I meant like in the slide. Can you just scroll? Wait, down? Sorry. But you
This?
scroll too much. No, all the way in the bottom. Like
All the way
after
in the bottom.
example 2. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Like
In
right
this
there.
part?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
I will upload the lecture note on Blackboard. So if you go to the Blackboard, you will see the lecture note there. I already upload the notes from the first class.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. And I see people asking for the C++ book. Was recommended. There's 3 version. What do you mean? There's 3 version? I think the one if you goes to the I think the book I put in the bookstore as the recommended book. That's the one I recommend you to get. So that's the 3rd edition. So I don't know when you mean there's 3 versions for the 3 different edition. Get the latest edition, right? And the book pretty much cover the same material, but since once a while the C++ they will update some comments. So get the latest edition. The concept should be similar. So just get the one I have is the 3rd edition. So I don't think there's any newer one. Good.
Professor, I have a question.
Mhm.
So where in the textbook, where would I find like this lesson or like this subject?
Okay, so what we did is in chapter 1.
If it's chapter 1, all right, thank you.
Yes. Okay, everyone have a nice day.